Pretty good. We had some pretty, that was our biggest win since we started this whole thing 8 months ago. So since we've had these projections and the optimizer, so it feels, even though we're not the ones that won the money, it feels really good. So obviously shout out to Turn&Burn. That's awesome. He won $45,000 off of $50 in entries. So yeah, we can go over that, see how he did it. Maybe we can do a show, a podcast with him later on, just to discuss it. Yeah, but for now we can just go over it. I sent you the links, so you can open we can start with the Rams game. Yes. Yeah, so yeah, you don't know NFL at all, so I'll be the one going over it for the most part. So if we go to our tool, we can actually just build. Actually, before we build, we should change two things just so we comply with the DK guidelines. So you can just scroll down to the bottom, find next page, find someone without a projection and just exclude them. You can exclude Penny or just change his projection. Yeah, if you do two, yeah, exactly. If you do two, you're good. So then you can build 10 lineups, and then yeah, for sure. And then, so the one that actually won here is the 8th one. I think our camera is in the way, but so the 8th team just running straight optimals. I'm not sure if Turn&Burn changed anything, but it's pretty cool that the 8th team won him $7,000 in this contest. So you can go to the DK thing and we can go over it. So he had Russ Wilson, Jared Goff, Cooper Kupp, Chris Carson, Matt Gay, and Josh Reynolds. So his main the main reason he won here is because I think a lot of guys didn't get there. He didn't have Seattle receivers, so he didn't pair Russ with Metcalf or Lockett. And he actually had Gay and Reynolds, who were pretty low owned. They performed really well for the slate. And yeah, he won $6,900 from this. I think it was a $10 entry fee. So that was his first win of the night. And then into the night game, it was Tennessee versus Green Bay. So we're here now. So just going over it, he won $20K in this specific contest, but I think he entered some 20 entry max stuff as well. So in total, he won $40K from this lineup off of, I believe, $40 entry fees.
Yeah, we have it right here.
Yeah, so $32, $38K. And then I guess we can go to the next, that screenshot just to show it. So $10, $6,900 just from the 8th optimal lineup. So now, to the Tennessee game.
Let's just we gotta do the compliance check.
Yeah, compliance check for sure.
I think my mic was muted at the start, but we're just going over the big Turn&Burn takedown. Everyone heard Chris, so you guys heard what he said, but yeah, let's jump into it. The compliance check is done, Chris.
Yeah, so you can just build 10 lineups, I guess, and we can. I think he actually changed. So for his compliance check, he lowered Henry and Tannehill a little bit. We don't have to do that now, and I think he raised Aaron Jones, I believe he said, or maybe Devontae Adams. So once these build, we can see. So here, the 5th optimal one. Our camera's in the way again, but that's okay. We can see the team in the other tab. So all these lineups did pretty well. The thing is, right now, our results, it doesn't, for captain, it doesn't multiply his results. So he didn't actually score 141 with that lineup. If you go to the DK page, you can see what he actually did. Yeah, so he scored 164 on this lineup. This is the 5th optimal, which is pretty cool. Just running 5 optimals, and he gets this lineup. He wins 19K in this contest. The big thing here is St. Brown. He caught a touchdown. He got him at 5%, $200, which is just a smash value play. He was only in one of the top 10 optimals. And then another thing that was big on this slate, I believe I didn't play this slate, but I watched some of the game. I think Aaron Jones got hurt, so then Dylan, his role expanded, even though Jamal Williams was out. So he was the main guy while Jones was hurt. I believe he came back. So he got 30 points from Dylan at 29%, which is huge for him. So that injury helped him a lot. And then, yeah, so that's just, it's pretty cool how off of his 10 lineups or 20 lineups, he won the big contest.
Yeah, always cool to see members do well. It's quite nice. Yeah. I don't think anyone heard me before because my mic was muted, but if you guys like this content, be sure to subscribe and like on YouTube. It helps out a lot with the algorithms, and we really appreciate it. Yeah, do you want to jump into NBA now, or did you? I think you want to do some questions before that, if there were any.
Yeah, I think there was one main question that I wanted to answer that I was asked earlier in the day.
Yeah.
If I can just find it really quick. It was, if you don't mind going over the different variations of the optimizer settings for GPP games in NBA, that would be awesome. Okay, so we can just go to today's slate, I guess, for NBA. We can go on Fanduel because we don't have to do the compliance check over there.
Yeah, I mean, we don't mind compliance. We're compliant, but Fanduel's a bit easier.
Yeah. Okay, so if you go to the optimizer settings, I think you could change the build from 60 just so we don't have to wait for 60 lineups.
200, that's
make
a
it
lot.
10.
10?
Yeah, and then, so the thing here, actually let's go to yesterday's slate and then just run optimals and then compare what the settings do. I think that makes more sense.
Sure.
Yeah, so once that loads up, just run it and see what we get, and then we'll play with each setting quickly and then see what they do.
Yep. As always, guys, if you have questions, just put them in the YouTube comments or in our Discord, and we'll just answer them throughout the show. And
yeah, we'll answer them as we go.
Q&A at the end as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, here it is.
So, yeah, these are, I think you have some settings in here, which is, okay, so.
Maybe. Yeah, I think I have my settings from yesterday.
Yeah, D'Angelo Russell, that one didn't really work.
Yeah. I think I have quite a few, actually. Well, you guys can see what I did yesterday then. Some of it.
And then, I think his name is Nick. He says, do you have any staple settings for NBA for someone running 20 max? For
do you want to answer that one first?
Yeah, if I'm running 20 max, usually I like to sort of differentiate myself from the field a little bit. So I think we can go over it at the end of the show. We can actually build a 20 entry max, just a build, and then you can see how we handle that.
Yeah.
Okay,
sure.
so you have all this here, right?
All of,
like, everything is normal.
Yeah,
Can you
I
run the
think
optimals?
It should be.
Okay, just run them.
I don't think I have anything here.
Yeah, so just go to optimizer settings. So these are the regular optimals. Obviously, this isn't what was there before lock because Joel Embiid was ruled out after lock. Our projections really liked Thomas Bryant, and he locked right away. So
Also Towns.
yeah, so my lineup was not very similar to this one, but yeah, so we can go over unique first, Gary. So what unique does is it changes the amount of unique players in each lineup. So let's say the setting is at 2. Every lineup you build will have at least 2 different players. If the setting is at 3, each lineup, if you compare the 2 lineups, they'll have at least 3 different players. So if you just make it, I don't know, 3 or 4, Gary, and then build it, we can see the differences.
Yeah, before we do that, one thing I'll say is usually the higher up you slide the unique setting, you should always keep in mind, like, if you first do a build with one unique, and just keep in mind like the projected fantasy points for the very first lineup and then the last one, because it kind of gives you a good idea of like how big of an impact your settings will have on, I guess, projected fantasy points. Because if you put like 4 or 5 uniques, you'll actually see the PFP goes down, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's just something I like to keep in mind just to look at.
Yeah, so right now the difference between the first and the 10th is like point 0.3.
Yes.
So now
336.
Run it with 4 uniques and we can see the difference. So it's a 0.3 difference with 1 unique, and with 4 uniques it's a 2-point difference. So pretty big there. So with these lineups, every lineup will have at least 4 different players from each other lineup. So you can see the main staples of this build are Steph Curry, Beal, Naz Reid, Dwight Howard. So in the other slots, you'll just be rotating 4 different players in each lineup. So personally, I don't really use this setting, especially in NBA, because I think projections are so sharp. It's not a bad thing to use. It just adds some randomness and variance to your build. So personally, I like to actually handle this sort of stuff myself by changing projections instead of just having it sort of random. So it's not something I really use, but if I was to use it in GPPs, I would probably set it around 2, just because then you're not getting like crazy different with your build, but you're getting a little bit different.
Yeah, and one thing I'll say is, as we said, like the difference between the projected fantasy points for the total, the higher you put your unique slider, the bigger the difference you'll see. But also, the more lineups you generate, the bigger the difference you'll see between the first one and the last one. Say you're doing like 150 entries on Fanduel, you'll see a bigger difference there. So, because it's really trying hard to fit in 4 unique players in each lineup, and as you get to the 150th lineup, you're gonna have some really interesting plays there.
Yeah.
For me, I don't mind increasing this in 20 entry or like 150 entry if I have like a few players locked in. Like if I have like a core of 3 or 4 players, I don't mind playing around with this, because if I really believe in that core of 3 or 4 players doing well, I don't mind having the optimizer sort of give me a lot of variance between the other pieces. So I kind of like doing that sometimes.
Yeah, so I think that's the main use for it. If you have like a core locked in, and then for the rest of the lineups you just want to switch out pieces just so maybe one of them has a shot at winning. Like this is only for GPPs, and if you're trying to get unique, that's mainly what this setting is for.
Yeah, but with that in mind, it's not the only thing you can do to make your build unique. Like there's a lot of different ways you can go about it. This isn't the only way, so there's a lot of different ways to do it. Like Chris said, you can adjust the projections for players individually. You can do minimum and maximum. You can do the individual player randomness. You could do player groups. You could do team stacks. You can do position stacks. Like there's a lot of stuff you can do. So I don't know if there's a best setting necessarily, but I think it just depends on your play style and kind of maybe what you like, your edge, what you kind of know for this slate, like what you think will do well, and then sort of working that into the optimizer and having the optimizer build around that. So like there's a lot of experimenting you can do. We do have a backtesting feature actually, so you can actually go to a previous slate and mess around with the rules and just see what gives you the highest actual fantasy point result in hindsight. Like we have it here. You can see it. So there's a few settings here. There's no harm in actually going back in time and just playing with the optimizer and seeing what it would have done well. Sometimes you only need one change to make that difference. Like you don't need to get too crazy. But maybe you know a lot about the sport, about the slate, about the players playing, and you have some sort of edge that you want to take. So lots of ways to do it.
Yeah, and then I want to go over the rest of these settings. So minimum projection, that's sort of self-explanatory. It just means if you set it at like 10, you won't get any players who have a projection lower than 10 in any of your lineups. Max exposure, sort of the same thing. It's just if you set it at like 50%, you'll only get a maximum of 50% of a certain player in each of your builds. So let's say we had Steph Curry popping a lot in the previous build. So if you had that at 50, he would only pop up in 50% maximum. And then randomness is another one that we sort of get a lot of questions about. Personally, I don't use it as well just because I think the projections are so sharp. Basically what it does, can you just go over the info thingy, Gary?
Oh, yeah.
So if the slider is set at 2 and the player has a projection of 10, it'll randomly give the player a different projection between 8 and 12 because the slider is set at 2. So I don't really love using this in my GPPs just because I like playing around with exposure more and actually having my own input in the build. So you can probably just set it at like, I don't know, 2 or 3, Gary, and then we can see what the build gives us. And for uniques, you can change it back to 1 and then exposure, make it 100.
Yeah, I guess what Chris said about randomness, it's kind of like all the other settings kind of give you more input on your build. Like if you do player groups or team stacks, or you adjust individual player minimum, maximum, or their projections, that's kind of more of your own input. So I think the edge in DFS is always to be had with people who actually know the sport and kind of have their own take that I guess the rest of the field doesn't have.
Yeah, so did you build 10 lineups or 20 lineups?
Oh, this is 20.
Yeah, so you have max exposure at 50, so that means your top 10 will have Steph Curry, and then and then the rest don't have that. So can you just change it back to 100 real quick?
Oh, sorry. This 100?
Yeah. And then just build 10 lineups. It's easier to see because you can only see 10 at a time.
Yeah.
So with randomness here, every player went through that process that I talked about earlier. So you set it at 3, so I think it's plus or minus 30% to their projection. So now in this particular build, I think Ben Simmons was probably bumped up. And then some of the players that you don't see, like Zion, he's not popping as much. Ingram, he's not popping as much. They were probably bumped down a little bit. So it's not a bad setting to use, but it's not something I like to use in NBA where projections are so sharp.
Yeah.
I think we have a question here from Q. He says, if I have, say, Harden locked at 50%, 10 lineups, is there a way to spread those 5 Harden lineups in anything other than the first 5? Well, the thing is with that, if his projection is like really high, let's say, I don't know, 75, just so it's easy to understand, he'll pop up in the first 5 just because the first 5 lineups will have a big discrepancy compared to the next 5. So it's just because his projection is so high for that particular slate. If you want him to be like mixed in a bit more throughout all the 10, I think you would have to lower his projection a little bit and then still have him at minimum 50%.
Yeah.
I think that sort of answers it, but yeah.
Yeah, and again, just keep in mind you can always backtest all these features, all these different settings, and just kind of build out and develop your own play style that you're comfortable with. Like you don't even have to play the slate and put real money on the line if you're not comfortable with it yet, the different settings, but you can always go back and just play around with them and see what works well for you.
Yeah, the thing with that is you have to be careful on this slate. Like yesterday's slate would not be a good one to do that on because we got the late news on Embiid. So all the builds before lock didn't have Howard or Harris, but a lot of them here do.
Yeah, I think we should actually probably fix that, kind of make the projections for backtesting maybe lock, or I don't know. I'm actually not
No,
too sure.
it wouldn't make sense because then you're losing your edge for the
The later
actual
ones?
day. No, like for the actual day, you won't. If it locks right at lock, you won't be able to.
I meant more for backtesting, but yeah, it'd be strange because then
But how it? Yeah,
it's still strange.
it's hard to do. Like you just have to pick a slate where this didn't happen. Usually it doesn't happen, so I don't think it's a problem.
Okay. Love the new low windows from Hasty. Can see more of the spreadsheet. Okay. Do you want to go over the slate today? No? Jump into that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let me open that up.
And then if you guys have any questions, we'll answer them as they come in. Just because I feel like that's you guys stay more engaged that way instead of just throwing them all at the end. We actually have one here from Nick. I think if your name is Nick, can you confirm that to me? He says, what would you say the most important step for someone beginning to enter MME starting with a 20 max in line a jukebox or $1.20 max?
I have an answer.
Okay.
I think most important step is to manage your bankroll properly, because that's just the number one thing. Proper bankroll management. You do that by playing more cash games than GPP, right, Chris?
Yeah, I play like 80% cash games, 20% GPPs.
80-20. Yeah, so I think number one thing is bankroll management, because if you can play GPP, beyond management. Do you want to answer, Chris?
Well, is the question, are you asking like what's a better contest, the jukebox or the $1.20 max? Or are you asking if 20 entry, I think jukebox is 150 entries. So is your question, is it better to enter 20 in the jukebox or 20 in the 20 max? Is that your question, Nick?
The jukebox is 150 entry, right?
Yeah, so I think that's his question. Let's see if he's typing right now, so we'll get that. You can just start. Oh yeah, you already have it set up. Okay, let's just wait for his question. We have a question from Aiden here. He says, will Rondo get minutes tonight? So he's trolling. Is Tasty in the chat? There's we might have some friction. Rondo hater, CP3 lover,
Hasty's
and
in the
opposite
YouTube
for
chat.
Aiden.
We've got them split
Yeah.
up. One's in Discord, one's in YouTube. Split up.
Okay, that's good. So Nick says, I guess, what's the best way to start making 20 lineups for a slate? If you're making 20, I would definitely stick to the 20 entry max, just because if you're entering 20 into the 150 entry max, you're putting yourself behind just from the start, because other people have 150 lineups. You only have 20. So they have more combinations, you have less. It's not a really smart thing to do.
Yeah.
I would stick to the if you're trying to play GPP, I would always max it. So I would stick to 20 entry max.
Okay. Yeah, if you guys have more questions throughout the show, we'll answer them, and then dedicated Q&A at the end. Okay, let's get into this first game, because otherwise I feel like we might have trouble with time. And before I do that, if you guys like the show, again, just be sure to like and subscribe. It helps out a lot with YouTube recommendations and algorithms. So we'd appreciate that a lot. Okay, so we can go over Detroit first. Right now for them, I think we have Blake Griffin, who is out. Dembuya probable, Okafor questionable, and Rose is out. And then for their projected starters right now, we have Hayes, Delon Wright, Dembuya, not sure about that, Grant, and Plumlee. Any thoughts on this game, Chris?
So just in general, before we start with this game, we have a 5-game slate here. We have news. The big news is Detroit, because they're resting Blake and Rose on the first end of a back-to-back, and then Brooklyn, they're resting Kyrie and Durant on the second half of a back-to-back, and also Dinwiddie, I think he tore his ACL. So there's value there, and then there's value on Detroit. So those are probably the main teams we're going to be looking at. So starting on Detroit, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so this team, they're underpriced just because we have the two main guys resting. So their Vegas total isn't great. It's at 107 right now. It's a 10-point spread for Atlanta, so it could blow out, but I probably wouldn't bank on that. Just because Atlanta they're not a great team. Like, they're not a top team. They're just middle of the pack. So I don't think they can end it too early. The main guys here, Killian Hayes, he's the rookie. He's too cheap on both sites. I think he's 3.8 on Fanduel, 4.2 on DraftKings. So I like him a little more on Fanduel just because we have 2 point guards that we need to pick. On DraftKings, I don't mind him 4.2, but I think there's other value. Like, we can jam in more nets maybe. So I like him a little more on Fanduel, but he's a really solid play. He should see 30 minutes. Also, we have Delon Wright, same sort of thing. He should see more minutes. He's only 4.2 on Fanduel. I think he's 4.6 on DK, so he's really cheap there as well. Super good value. Definitely someone that we're going to have in probably both lineups. Maybe I like him a little more on DraftKings, but I like him on both sites. He's too cheap for his role without Rose and Blake playing. In the front court, Jeremy Grant, he's 5.9 on DK, 5.7 on Fanduel. I don't mind that, but just because we have Brooklyn news, I don't think we need it. I think we can get small forwards and power forwards from that team instead. Mason Plumlee, he's a little too cheap. I like him more on Fanduel at 6K. Just because Blake's out, he's been seeing like 32 minutes per game. He always has a high assist rate, so that's nice. He can get there with steals and blocks as well. So I don't mind him. I'm not trying to prioritize him just because he's Mason Plumlee, but he's a decent play. Josh Jackson, he's coming off the bench, I believe, and same thing. He's just too cheap. All these guys are too cheap for their role without their 2 main guys in. They get boosted minutes. So that's what we like to see in our DFS lineups. And then Sekou, he's a better DK play. He's 3.4K, so 400 over the minimum. On Fanduel, he's the minimum, but I think there's opportunity cost playing him at small forward just because we have better value that we'll talk about later. Yeah, so outside of those guys, well, that's a lot of guys, so this team is definitely a good team to target today with the injuries.
Yeah, some good injuries for DFS.
Yep.
Okay, let's go into Atlanta on the Atlanta side. For them, we have, I don't think there is any big injury news for them. Just Danilo Gallinari, who's questionable. I guess that's quite big. And then for their starters right now, we have Trae Young, Cam Reddish, Hunter, Collins, and Capella. Do you have any interest in these guys today?
So these guys are okay. So the big thing here is Capella is playing, but I believe they said he's limited to 20 minutes or minutes in the 20s. So he's not a great play for me, but I like that it boosts John Collins a bit just because Capella's minutes are capped. Trae Young, he's obviously always a great play. I forgot to mention that Atlanta has a 117 team total today, so that's one of the highest on the slate, I believe. So he's a good person to target. I like John Collins on Fanduel more than DraftKings. He's 7K on Fanduel. I think he's a little more on DraftKings. Yeah, he's 7.6, so more of a Fanduel play for me. Trae Young, obviously, he's always viable in GPPs. I don't mind him if you're playing him in cash just because your lineup construction gets you there, but I'm not trying to prioritize him. More of these value plays that have nice prices. Cam Reddish, I'm a big Cam Reddish guy, so I like him in GPPs, definitely not in cash games. Outside of that, not too much. So just to summarize, I like John Collins on Fanduel, don't mind him in cash, and then Trae Young GPP, both sites.
Okay. Before we move on to the next game, we have a few comments from Hasty. Plumlee is solid. I think he's solid today, yeah. And then also he's saying that Josh Jackson is a spaz. Any comment there, Chris?
Yeah, I think he got into some trouble with his kid like a few summers ago. I think he's cleaned up his act a little bit. He's looked good this year. His shot looks better, so
Yeah,
he's not.
And then
The spaz part doesn't scare me away today.
I'll follow up to that right away. He says Josh too angry. And then we also have another one. Nato proved the world wrong yesterday. I think he did.
Neto, yeah, he did. I think he got 41 on Fanduel. Everyone went ish. So if you pivoted, you probably had a good night. And then on DraftKings, we had him in all our builds, so that was really good.
Yeah, and then another one from Hasty. Herder and Hunter are their winners on Atlanta, I'm guessing. And then he says they're going to go off today.
Well, too bad Herder doesn't play much anymore. And then, I just wanted to go over the Aiden's question. He wasn't trolling. He said Rondo is 4.2K on FanDuel, and he's second in the depth chart, so not sure why Goodwin got minutes. It's probably just because it was Rondo's first game after he was in quarantine, so they probably wanted to manage his conditioning a little bit. Obviously, I don't think Goodwin is going to continue to be ahead of him in the depth chart. Chris Dunn is out with the ankle injury, so I don't mind Rondo. Definitely not someone that I'm trying to play in my lineups. But you can take some shots there. Obviously, he has upside.
Okay, let's go into the Memphis-Brooklyn game. We'll go over Memphis first. A few guys out for them. Tilly out, Porter out, Melton out, Tillman out. And then we can go over their starters right now. We have Morant, Allen, Brooks, Anderson, and Joval. Any interest on the Memphis side of this game?
Yeah, I have interest. This is probably my favorite game of the slate to target. Memphis has an implied team total of 114. Ja Morant, he's too cheap for me on both sites just because his role is expanding this season. He's looked really, really good. I think he's averaging like 55 fantasy points, something crazy like that. So I like him a lot in cash games, in GPPs. He's fitting into my FanDuel builds a lot just because of the price tag. He's 8.5. On DraftKings, he's okay. He's 8.3, I believe. I don't mind him as one of my last pieces, but I'm not going out of my way to target him. Someone that's mispriced completely is Dylan Brooks on FanDuel. He's 3.7K. Compared to DraftKings, where he's 5.5K, he chucks the ball. He shot 14 the first game, 23 the second game, and he's 200 over the minimum on FanDuel. So that's just a clear mispricing in one of the best game environments of the slate. He's also Canadian, so Hasty will probably like that one.
Yeah.
And then moving on in this.
Wait, before we do that,
this team,
you were wrong about Hasty. He's calling him a chucker.
Yeah, that's what I said. He is a chucker. He shot 23 the second game, 14 the first game. So
yeah,
he's just too cheap though. That's what we like, the chuckers in DFS. And then Kyle Anderson, I don't mind him. Obviously, it's hard for him to get there. I'd take some shots in GPPs, but not someone I love. Joval, he's also a pretty good play. I'm not going to go out of my way to target him like I usually say, but I don't mind him in GPPs.
Okay. On the Atlanta game, we think just got confirmed that Okafor is out.
Okafor's okay. That's good for Plumlee.
Yeah.
And then we also got Sekou as a game time decision, so we didn't know that before. That probably changes things a little bit. That if Sekou is out, Josh Jackson would probably be a lock. Just because he would be the one starting, I would assume. Luckily, that game is the first one of the slate, so we should know before lock. So that's good, but it's something that we'll monitor in the Discord.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's jump into Brooklyn. It's probably my favorite team to target in this slate. Durant out, Irving out, and Claxton out. For their starters right now, we have Shamet, LeVert, or I guess Dinwiddie also out. Green, Jordan, and Harris. What's your favorite play here today? Anything for cash? I mean, probably more for cash, but anything for GPP here?
So this team is who everyone will be getting players from. So Karis LeVert, he's going to be the highest owned player on the entire slate. He's going to get a role like he had last season, and he's only 6.3 on Fanduel. I think he's 6.5 on DraftKings. Let me just check. He's 6.6 on DraftKings, so he's just probably like 2 to 3K too cheap. Last year he was like 8K in this same role, so he definitely has like 50 to 60 point upside. They're playing a bad, or not a bad team, but like a team that is fast paced. They don't play too much defense, so Karis LeVert is a lock. In cash games, in GPPs as well, I would lock him. If you want some leverage on the field, I guess you can consider fading him, but not something I would do just because that's not usually the way I play.
Yeah, we have a comment on that. If you fade LeVert, I'm praying for you.
Yeah, exactly. So, but the thing is, that's how everyone's going to be thinking. So if you want to get different and LeVert, I don't know, scores like 20, 25 fantasy points, like you're way ahead of probably 90% of the field.
Yeah, that'd be great. But I mean, at this price, that's a hard decision to make, even for me. And I like to take some hot takes sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. So other guys from this team, Joe Harris, he's just too cheap. They have too many guys out. Dinwiddie, Irving, Durant. So Joe Harris, he's probably gonna get like 35 minutes. 4.6 on DK, 4.3 on FanDuel. Just lock him in. There's really no reason not to. Taishan Prince, someone else I like more on DraftKings. He's 100 over the minimum, so he's 3-1. So same reason that we like all these other guys. Just with the injuries, they're just too cheap for their roles. This is an elite game environment. They're projected to score 112 with a tight spread, so just really awesome plays from here. I wouldn't really touch Allen and Jordan just because they're priced the way they should be, and they're both going to split minutes. So just to summarize, my favorite plays here are Karis LeVert, Joe Harris, and then Taishan Prince on DraftKings.
Do you have any interest or thoughts on TLC for GPP on FanDuel?
I think we still have to wait to see who's starting, but if he's starting, maybe some interest. He's 3.6K. We have Dylan Brooks at 3.7K. He's a chucker, so I'd rather play Dylan Brooks. I'd rather play Delon Wright. We talked about him. So not really, just because of the way the position is today. Yeah.
Okay, then we have a question. Any favorite locks and fades? Maybe we can do that one at the end once we go through all the games.
Yeah, so far, my favorite lock is Karis LeVert, obviously, and then Joe Harris as well, both sites.
Okay, let's jump into the next game, Utah OKC. We can go over Utah first. For their news, we just have Harrison, probable, Derek Favors, probable. And then for their starters right now, we have Mike Conley. Hasty loves that guy. Donovan Mitchell, Bogdanovic, Royce O'Neal, and Rudy Gobert. Any interest in this game for cash or GPP?
Not really. This game, like, I don't want to just talk about every game and then say that I like players from each team. Like, this game is one that I'm fading, so I don't think many people will be on it. You can take that route in GPPs and try to stack it maybe. From Utah, they're just so balanced. There's not really anything that stands out for us in DFS. They're priced as they should be. So I'm probably staying away even in GPPs. In cash games, I'm staying away for sure. So yeah, we could talk about Donovan Mitchell. He hasn't looked very good. Like, he's been shooting, I don't know, 35%, 33%. So hasn't looked too good. Bogdanovic, 4.7 on FanDuel is a little interesting. The problem with him is he's really scoring reliant. So if he's not scoring like 20 points, 15 points, he's probably not going to smash his price tag.
Okay. Blake Griffin just got some more news confirmed out. I guess there's more back-to-back news for him.
Yeah, so we got the starting lineup for the Grizzlies. It's Ja, Grayson Allen, Dylan Brooks, Kyle Anderson, and Joe Val. So it's as we expected.
Okay. We have some questions here. Jeff Green question mark from Hasty. Chris.
Yeah, maybe. Like, I don't know. I know Hasty doesn't really play DFS, but you have to spend up a power forward with the way the slate is looking because there's so much value at shooting guard and small forward. So he's not really someone I'm considering. Obviously, he could get there, but I don't think it fits construction today.
Yeah, and then another thing we have is Mitchell will make up for last night. I mean, at some point he has to, but
yeah, he didn't have he scored 43 fantasy points 2 nights ago, not last night, but he shot 6 for 23. So obviously there's upside if he can get his stroke going. So yeah, but the thing is, it's not a game that I want to target. So that's the main reason.
Okay, and then one more. Are you going to SGA with Harden and Brooks on the slate?
Yeah, so we're about to talk about the Thunder. I think you can just go over the starters and then we can answer that question.
Sure. For the Thunder, we just have Jerome out, and then for the starters right now, we have SGA, Hill, Dort, Baisley, and Horford. Before you go on, someone also said that Horford could be interesting with our ownership projection for him at 6%.
Yeah. Okay, so the first question was about SGA. On Fanduel, I'm not sure I need him. So he's 7.8K. We have Harden up top, and then we have a value piece. That's probably going to be the construction that we're going with. So he's not someone that I'm prioritizing there. If you're playing GPPs, I love him a lot. Like, his role is really big in this offense now without CP3. He looked pretty good. He had the game winner last game. My concern is his minutes. He only played 34 last game. Maybe it was because it was their first game, so maybe they're just ramping him up. But I like SGA a lot on DraftKings. He's 8K there, but he fits the construction of the builds really well. Like, he fits that last piece that we want. Even though they're only implied to score 105, I think he makes a lot of sense on DraftKings just because he can get there with a probably double-double, triple-double maybe. Turnovers obviously are worth less on DraftKings, so that's helpful. So I like him a lot on DraftKings in cash games. Fanduel, he's probably only GPP for me. And then Horford, he's someone that we got a question about. So he played 28 minutes their first game. He got 25 fantasy points. The thing is, he only scored 3 real-life points and still got 25 fantasy points. So I do think there's upside there. If he gets more shots, he only shot the ball 5 times. So I like Horford. I don't think many people will be on him. What did we have him at? 6%, 7%?
Yeah, 6.7 on FanDuel.
Yeah, so I like that a lot in GPPs actually. Like, that play makes a lot of sense to me. I think his price on DK is a little more. He's 6K compared to 5.7 on FanDuel. So I don't mind him there. If you want to pivot off of like Mason Plumlee, I don't mind him.
Okay.
Yeah, other than that, not really too much interest here. Baisley, you can take some shots there. I had him his first game. He played really well, but they priced him up a little, so I don't love him, but he's fine in GPPs.
Yeah, I'll just comment on George Hill. He's on my list of fraudsters, so I'm probably going to fade him completely, even though he's probably not going to get in any of the builds, but I just don't want him at all.
Yeah, so George Hill, we had him in our builds the first game just because he was cheaper. 100 over the minimum on DraftKings.
Yeah.
Now he's 4.5, so they priced him appropriately where he should be, so not too much interest there.
Yeah.
Like, the thing is, he shot 8 for 9 from the field last game. I don't expect that to continue. So yeah.
Okay, Houston at Denver. We can go over Houston first. They have everyone out for them still. Martin Jr., Jones, Cousins, Wall, Gordon, McLemore, Green, Whittington. And then for their starters right now, we have Harden, Nwaba, House, Tucker, and Wood. Wood is looking really good this year. I really like him. So looks like it'll be an interesting game again to watch Harden. He's such a beast.
Yeah, so which team are we talking about first here?
Houston.
Yeah, so on the Houston side, they still have all their same guys out as their first game, so we sort of know what they're going to do, who the ball is going to go to. It's just James Harden, Christian Wood. They're locks for me on both sites, Cash and GPP. I'm playing them in every build with Karis LeVert. But if you want leverage off the field, this is where you can do it. Same as LeVert, like these guys are going to be massively owned. If you want leverage, you can, I don't know, fade maybe 2 of the 3. Maybe you can set a group that only fits a maximum of 1 of them into your lineup, something like that. But if you're playing cash games, you got to lock these guys in. Like, there's just no reason to fade these 2. So I don't want to talk about them too much, just because I think they're complete locks. They're still underpriced for their role. Down low, maybe Tate. He looked decent in the first game. You can take some shots there for GPPs. House, he's a decent play, but just because we have other guys in the same position that project better, we're not going to get too much of him. So you can take some shots here. There's some good pivots from Chalk here from this game. And also, if you want to, like I said, if you want to leverage from the field, you can do that using Wood and Harden. Or fading Wood and Harden.
A lot of group for that for now.
Not something I'd recommend, though.
Yeah, I might be interested in fading Harden, but I like Wood today. I like the idea of fading Harden because he's kind of expensive, so it'll free up salary for other spend ups, so it could be an interesting fade.
Yeah, so if you do that, you'll probably get players like Jokic, who's going to be like severely underowned. You'll get AD, I guess, Trae Young probably, so you'll get some good leverage off of the field, but it's
some guys with some high upside.
It's not something that I would do. Like Harden's probably, what do we project him for here? Like 58 on Fanduel, probably 60 on DraftKings. So definitely a scary fade. Not something I would do.
You think he's going to get more than 58?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Okay.
Just because the offense runs through him entirely.
Yeah, I think he might do more than 58. It's tough. I'm not 100% on that Harden fade. Some comments. Houston is a mess. Harden is taking this season off. Wood is money. And Fat Boy James Harden dropping 70 tonight.
Yeah, I mean, all that is true, but
some good takes.
All we care about is today and how they do today. Like, we don't care if they shoot 10 for 30. As long as they get there with other stats, that's all we need.
Yeah, and then David Nwaba, sleeper potentially today.
Yeah, for sure. So he started last game. I think we projected Sterling Brown to start, but it was Nwaba, so he had a pretty decent game. He played 26 minutes, scored 20 fantasy points, so not too much upside there, but he's a decent play.
Yeah, I'm just gonna put him in
someone I'm playing in cash though.
Yeah. And then a question for neither of us, but I guess for Harden. How are the strip clubs in Denver?
Not as good as Portland, not as good as Houston, not as good as Atlanta. Probably not too many in Denver.
Okay, so that's good for Harden then, if you play Harden.
Yeah.
For GPP, I mean, maybe not good for Harden himself. Okay, let's go over.
Yes. Yeah.
What?
I was gonna say maybe he plays worse because of that. I don't know.
Yeah, you never know. Okay, Denver news. Injuries. I think my bad. I mentioned some Denver guys injured for Houston, but it's JaMychal Green and Whittington. For their starters right now, we have Jamal Murray, Harris, Michael Porter Jr., Millsap, who is on my list of fraudsters. I don't really like playing him that much, and then Jokic.
So this team is probably my favorite GPP team to target. Like, these guys aren't going to pop in any optimals just because we have better plays elsewhere. And they have an implied team total of 114, so it's pretty high. They have guys that can like smash the slate. They have Jokic, who has an insanely high ceiling. Michael Porter Jr., obviously, if he gets 30 minutes, he can smash the slate as well.
Yeah.
Paul Millsap, you were talking about him. I don't mind him, but the thing is, you gotta hope that he plays the minutes. With JaMychal Green out, I think the minutes are a bit more secure. but he doesn't really have a ceiling. His floor is, you're just playing him for the floor, but I think there's better plays as floor pieces in other games, so don't need him. So the main thing to take away here is probably Jokic and Porter Jr. in GPPs. I think they're really good ways to get different. And then Jamal Murray, he hasn't looked too good. He's having a pretty slow start, so not someone I love targeting right now at this point of the season.
Okay. Paul Millsap is the imposter of the slate. Comment on YouTube. And
Yeah.
Michael Porter Jr. taking Millsap's minutes. What do you think about that?
They actually start them alongside each other, so it's actually Will Barton who takes Michael Porter Jr.'s minutes, and then they played I think it was Murray, Harris. I don't know. They played some lineup, but it wasn't Millsap and Porter Jr. who were eating each other's minutes.
Okay. Let's go into the next game then. Portland at LA. Can go over the Portland guys first. Right now we still have Little out and Carmelo Anthony is out. And then for starters right now we have CJ McCollum, Lillard, Derek Jones Jr., Rocco, and Nurk. Any interest in these guys?
Yeah, so the big thing is that Melo is out, so Derek Jones Jr. should have a better floor for his minutes. So he's only 3.6 on Fanduel, I believe, so he fits the build if you're playing him as a last piece. You probably don't need him just because we have the two Nets guys at small forward on Fanduel, but I don't mind him. He obviously has steal and block upside because he's so active. The thing with him is he's probably going to guard the best player, so if LeBron plays, he's probably going to be on LeBron, so that means he could get into foul trouble. It's always a concern, but he's so cheap that it doesn't really matter too much. Robert Covington, I like him. He's with Melo out, he probably gets a few more shots, so don't mind him. Nurkic, he's looking really good on FanDuel. He's 6'8", so he's definitely someone I'm considering in my cash games as of now. The Dame and CJ, I don't know. It's interesting. So this game, this is probably the second highest over/under on the slate. So theoretically, there should be some high scores from this game. So you could take shots in GPPs on Lillard and CJ, but not something I'm probably going to do.
CJ went off last game.
Yeah, same as Lillard. The OT helped him a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, CJ had like 60 fantasy points.
Which one of them is lower projected ownership right now?
They're probably both pretty low, just because we have Rockets, we have Pistons, we have Nets.
Lillard pretty high here, 27, almost 30%, and then CJ at 10 on FanDuel, so it's quite a big difference, 3x. So in GPP, I'd probably be interested more in.
So the thing is with that, just the way construction is, at shooting guard, you're going to play Harden and you're going to play a cheap guy like Brooks or Delon Wright. So CJ isn't going to fit into many builds, and then point guard, you're spending up at 1, and then Killian Hayes is obviously a lock. So if you're spending up on Lillard, that's why his ownership or projected ownership is a little higher, just because you're spending up at point guard 1.
Yeah. Okay. We have one comment. Nurkic gets bullied by the Lakers time in and time out. Any comment on that, Chris?
I don't know about that one. Like, it's a new squad. Gasol is there, so Nurkic should be able to stay on the court. They don't get too small. They play AD and Harrell or AD and Gasol together, so it's not like we'll have Nurkic guarding AD. We don't really want that, so we want him guarding like a player like Gasol, a player like Harrell, he's not going to get into foul trouble on. Last season in the playoffs, he had a 53-point game and he had a 40-point game, so I don't think he doesn't struggle too much.
Yeah, and Gasol is the Embiid stopper, as far as I know, right?
Yeah, I think you would know more about that than me.
Yeah, that's the thing with Gasol. He's the
But
Embiid stopper.
the thing with him is his price is only 6'8" on FanDuel, and he fits as sort of a last piece in cash builds.
Okay. I think we have to go over the Lakers now. For their injuries, we have Caruso and James questionable. Starters right now: Schroeder, Caldwell Pope, maybe James, Davis, and Gasol. Any thoughts
So
on this
the big thing here is LeBron going to play? Like, that's the news that's gonna. It might break the slate at the end of the night, because if LeBron is out, we would obviously want to lock in AD, but we're probably not going to have, like, our power forwards at lock will already be locked, so we won't be able to get to AD. So for that reason, if you want to play AD, just as of now, assuming LeBron is in, I don't mind that in GPPs, just because he has an insane ceiling. If LeBron doesn't play, he has an insane floor as well. So I like him. Kyle Kuzma, if LeBron is out, Kyle Kuzma is going to smash again. But the thing is, if LeBron is in, you're probably going to get like 20 from Kyle Kuzma, which you don't love. He's only 4.2 on FanDuel, which is a pretty nice price tag. So I don't mind taking some shots there, especially in GPPs. Not really anyone here that stands out for me in cash games as of now, just because we don't have the news on LeBron.
Kuzma's probably the riskier of the two between Kuzma and AD for that, depending on LeBron playing or not. So
yeah,
I think AD's a safer bet just because he's AD and he'll do well either way. Okay, do you want to go through some cash builds now?
Yeah, we can quickly go through FanDuel first, and then DraftKings, and then we can build out probably a 20 entry max on one of the sites.
Okay, sure. Before we do that, we can go over the giveaway. Right now we have a giveaway going on Twitter and YouTube. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel, once we hit 100, we'll be doing a giveaway to anyone who liked or retweeted our pinned tweet on Twitter. And the prize there is a free month of our subscription, which is a $75 value. And past that, it's priceless because you've seen some of the results we've had. So it's double money. It's a good deal. And beyond that, if you guys are enjoying the content, be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. It helps a lot with the algorithm, so that'd be appreciated. And yeah, we can go into Q&A if you guys have questions about anything here, about the tool, about the slate, about bankroll management, whatever it is, we can answer them now as we go through the builds.
Yeah, okay, so are we starting on FanDuel?
Yeah.
Just make sure you have the player groups and the settings normal. Yeah, so that's good for settings. Do you have player groups?
I just have them because these are players that I'm interested in later.
Yeah, so if it's 0 to 9, it doesn't affect our build here. So for the first lock, it's James Harden and Christian Wood, our first two locks. We talked about them. Their role right now is too big to fade for their price tags. Karis LeVert, we also talked about him. Obvious play in cash games. He's going to be probably 90% owned, so like him a lot. And then last one, we talked about him at the start of the show, Killian Hayes. No Derrick Rose solidifies his minutes. He should see at least 28 minutes. He's 3.8, I believe, on FanDuel.
Yep.
So yeah, I like him a lot. And then, yeah, those are the 4 locks for FanDuel cash games. We can probably hit build and then
10 or 20.
See, just 10 is good, and then we can see some of the 2v2s, 3v3s, and that sort of thing. Okay, so here we have, let me just see real quick. So we talked about Nurkic at center. Looks like the big difference between builds is Nurkic versus Plumlee, and then we have at shooting guard we have Dylan Brooks. We talked about him. He's a chucker and he's underpriced, so we like that a lot. And then Joe Harris, he's like, I like Joe Harris a lot with the guys out. He's still too cheap. He should have a decent minutes floor, so that first lineup looks really good to me. The difference between the top two are Brooks, Harris, Nurkic versus Delon Wright, Kyle Anderson, Mason Plumlee. Whenever I can, I don't really like to play Kyle Anderson, so I think I like the third build more than the second with Joe Harris.
Any reason why you don't like Kyle Anderson? Just scoring
Just
dependent?
because, no, he's not scoring dependent, but he's just, you never really know how many minutes he's gonna get. He has a really low floor. Like, he can play 30 minutes, get like 2 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. You don't really like that in DFS. Just because they have Ja Morant, who handles the ball so much. He's not someone I love to target. He doesn't shoot a lot, so don't love him. So if we're comparing the first and third builds now, because I like Joe Harris more than Kyle Anderson, it's Dillon Brooks and Yusuf Nurkic versus Delon Wright and Mason Plumlee. So this is actually a pretty close 2v2 here. I'm interested to see if Sekou is going to play. I think that'll change things a little here. If Sekou's out and Josh Jackson starts, I think that Josh Jackson will actually pop ahead of Joe Harris. So maybe I'll do that if Josh Jackson is starting and Sekou is out. As for the 2v2, I think the Dillon Brooks and Nurkic side makes more sense just because we have Dillon Brooks at 3.7K. He's probably going to shoot 15 times, which is really nice for his price tag. Nurkic, I like him. I talk about him. He's 6'8", so I like that side more than the second side with Plumlee.
Okay. Jump into DraftKings then?
Yeah.
Okay, let's just double check the settings here, make sure everything's good, and then do the compliance check.
Well, our compliance check here will be with our locks, just because we're locking in players. So, same as Fanduel, we're locking in Harden, Wood, and LeVert, just because they're too cheap here for their roles. Everything lines up. Everything looks good for them. And then one value play I talked about from Brooklyn is Taishan Prince. We can lock him in. And then also Joe Harris, just because he's 4'6". On DraftKings, the scoring system fits him better. You get the bonus for 3-point shots or 3-point makes. And yeah, so
quick
that's
question.
5 blocks.
Quick question. Mm-hmm. If LeBron doesn't play, how would that change things? We touched on that briefly before, but I think it's mainly it would make AD a very good play in GPP.
Well, it would make, the thing is,
it
would make Kuzma and AD locks, but we're targeting so many guys from these first games, the Brooklyn game and the Atlanta game. Yeah. So it's hard to, like, they would be locks if we had the LeBron news now, but since we don't have that news, we can't assume that it's going to happen, because if it doesn't happen, we're just so far behind.
Yeah, that's more of a GPP thing that you can do to kind of...
Yeah, if you're looking at it that way, you can definitely assume that LeBron is out for your GPP build, and then see how that does for you.
Yeah, so I think if you're doing that for GPP, in my opinion, I think AD is a safer bet than Kuzma, because AD can get there with LeBron in there, whereas Kuzma, that's a little hard for him to do anything with both of them playing.
Yeah, but I think for that reason, Kuzma will have lower ownership, so that's interesting. If you're playing at the angle that LeBron is out, I think you play Kuzma just because he's going to be lower owned.
Yeah.
And you're dead anyways if LeBron is in, probably, most likely.
Should we build these out?
Yeah, so we have these 5 locks. I mentioned them all throughout the show. They're all strong plays, so yeah, we can build it out. So here we have Delon Wright and Josh Jackson versus Sekou and Plumlee. So this is probably assuming that Sekou is in. Our projections haven't changed yet just because he's still projected to be in. So right now, as of now, if Sekou plays, I still like the first side just because I think Delon Wright has a pretty decent floor here with D-Rose out. He has a good minutes floor. Josh Jackson with Blake out, that helps him. He's probably going to see the floor a bit more, like the game floor. So I like that. Sekou is a little risky, so probably not too much interest there unless he's confirmed starting. If he's confirmed starting, I think that build will actually shoot up above the Delon Wright and Josh Jackson build. So you just got to keep an eye on the news and see how See how that goes. Just depends on who's starting between Sekou and Josh Jackson.
Okay.
And then I just want to touch on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So we had a question about him earlier. As you can see, he sort of fits the last piece here in this build. Yeah, so everything looks solid. We have our 5 locks, and then we have 3 other guys that have an improved role today.
Okay, I guess we can jump back to Nick's question about our favorite locks and fades, and we could just approach that from not a cash angle, I guess GPP, because we already went over cash.
Yeah, so I think he's a DraftKings only player, so we can just go to DraftKings, and then so obviously my favorite locks are the guys that we had locked there, those 5 guys. You can just unlock them for now if we're doing something else. Fades, I don't know, it's hard to fade anyone here just because we know that these guys are underpriced. If you're fading anyone, I'd take a shot at someone high owned like Wood, Harden, or LeVert. I know it's scary, but it can pay off big if you get it right. So with that, we can actually make a player group with those 3 guys, and then we can play around with that.
GPP.
So you're using the column that adds. You can just add the player group from this column, which is pretty cool.
Wait, sorry, what?
You can. You were on the column, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can just. This is a new feature we added, so you can just add the players to the group directly from the column, which is pretty cool.
Who do you want to add here?
Harden and Wood.
Yeah, Harden. I think I already added Wood, right?
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, so now you have this. You named it GPP fades. It's not really like a fade because we still want these guys, but we want probably like 0 to 2. So every lineup will have a maximum of 2 of these 3 guys. So assuming one of them doesn't get there and the other 2 smash like they're projected to, you have a pretty good shot at taking it down, just because you're fading probably like a 90% guy. All 3 of these guys are probably going to be in like 80 to 90% of lineups. So if you make this group with a maximum 2 of them, you can hit build, Gary, and we can see what happens. Yeah, so now we can see that every lineup here. How many did you build?
20. 20? Just to see a bit more player data here.
Yeah, so 20 entry max, like we were talking about earlier. You build 20 lineups. So here you can see. Yeah, so LeVert, he's too cheap. He's in 100% of lineups. So that means every other lineup will only have 1 of Wood or Harden. So Wood is 65%, Harden 35%. That adds up to 100. So you're good there. Yeah, so just this one simple change, actually, it leverages you from the chalk players quite a bit. So I kind of like that. The one thing I would do, maybe I would add a maximum to Karis LeVert, just because maybe I want some builds that don't have LeVert and have both Harden and Christian Wood.
What would you do, 66 or 30, 50?
Yeah, make it like 60, and then make Wood 60, and then Harden 60 as well. Let's see what happens. Actually, maybe 75 for all 3 of them. So if we do this, we're probably, since Karis LeVert was 100, we're probably going to get 75% Karis LeVert, and then we'll see what happens to the other 2 guys from there.
Yeah. One other thing, I don't think we ever touched upon it, but with the player card, it's a pretty neat feature. If you click on any of the players, you can actually see quickly which builds they're in. So it's kind of nice. It makes it a little easier to kind of analyze your build and sort of see what happened. Yeah. Let's build this one again then.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So this is DraftKings, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so now we have, as I said, 75% Karis LeVert, 75% Wood now. What's Harden at? He's probably a little higher, 50%. So now if you scroll down to the bottom, you're probably going to see the Karis LeVert missing teams. So you'll see the Wood and Harden teams. So, like, all these teams look decent. Just if one of these guys doesn't get there, you have a pretty big edge on the field. I'm not saying I'm not saying that all three of these guys won't get there. I'm just saying when you do this, and if it does happen, you have a really good chance at taking something down, especially a 20 entry max. Just because I think a lot of people will have all three of them in their lineups, in their builds. So yeah, like all these look solid. You get some Jokic, you get some, who else is popping up here? You get some Ja Morant, you get some, I don't know, Yusuf Nurkic on DraftKings.
You're putting a lot of faith into Prince here and Wright and Harris.
Yeah, I don't mind that. Like they're just too cheap for their roles. Like if you don't like that, you can probably change it to like 70, 60, see what that does. You'll probably get more guys like, I don't know, like maybe Sekou, more of Josh Jackson, guys like that, Derek Jones Jr. So you're not really going to like safer guys, you're just sort of changing your build.
Yeah. Let's see what happens here. A bit more
okay,
Wood.
So
actually.
now we have more Christian Wood. We have less Prince, less Harris, less Delon Wright. I think Mason Plumlee shot up a little bit. We have more Killian Hayes. He's another cheap guy that's really good value on this slate. Maybe we can fade someone. I don't know. Maybe SGA, we think that that's a bad game to target. We can just set him at 0 max and then rebuild that. Or just exclude him. Same thing.
Do you have any comment on the fact that there's not too many low projected ownership guys here?
It's a 5-game slate with a lot of injury news, so the ownership is going to be condensed.
But you don't think there's any need to go to a few guys in all your lineups that are like, say, 10% projected ownership? Nothing like that?
I don't think so, because in this build you get guys like, you get Jokic, you get Donovan Mitchell, you get guys that don't project to be the chalk. So, like, just because it's a 5-game slate, there's not going to be many 10% guys that you really want to target.
Yeah.
So now that you did this, oh, is this the old build? We still have SGA here.
I think it's because let me just put them to 0.
Nick says, am I able to rewatch the streams back tomorrow? Just for reference, lots of good material tonight. Yeah, so after the stream ends, the VOD is posted on the same channel, so you can see all of that.
I'm just going to lower his projection, because for some reason it's not working right now.
Yeah, so now we have no SGA. We're getting more of Donovan Mitchell. We're getting more of Mason Plumlee, I think. So we're really targeting the Brooklyn Pistons game here. So it's still a chalky build, but just because we made that player group that only will include a maximum of 2 of the main guys, you're still getting pretty different. I think in the last build, the main difference here is that now we have more James Harden. So James Harden is 75% now. He was like, I don't know, 50 before. So yeah.
Okay, let's wrap it up then. Be sure to like and subscribe if you guys enjoy the content. Helps a lot. And if you guys have any questions leading up to the slate, I think there's 45 minutes before it locks. We'll be in the Discord hanging out there, so that's for members only. If you like what you see and you want to actually play with Optimizer, we have a 3-day free trial on our website, which is, I think it's in the description, dfscrunch.com. And you can get in for free for 3 days. Try it out. You can join our Discord, chat there, so no commitment from you. And yeah, it should be a good slate. I'm excited for it. Lots of good news for DFS. And yeah, anything you want to say before we log off, Chris?
Just a closing thought is, we got news on the Thunder starters, and they're as expected. And then we also got Gallinari out. So when I was talking about the Hawks, we presumed Gallinari would be out. So John Collins still a really good play. And then yeah, I hope everyone has a good slate. Hope we crush like last night. I think DraftKings and Fanduel both crushed. NFL on DraftKings crushed. So everything is looking good.
Good holiday
We
season.
also have the NFL slate today. So if you're playing NFL, I'm down to answer any questions in the Discord. And yeah, hopefully we have a good slate.
Yeah, before we log off, just quickly, you guys can see here, actually, Chris just said there's some news, and you can actually see all of the ownerships and projected fantasy points. They all line or update here in the background. You don't have to refresh, and you can kind of see it here. And yeah, it's really, really convenient, really straightforward. So yeah, we'll see you guys tomorrow. I think tomorrow is it a 4 p.m. start? 7 p.m. Eastern?
Yeah, probably. Usually Wednesdays are pretty big slates. I'm not sure about tomorrow, but I think it's 4 p.m. 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, good luck today. See you
we'll
guys.
We'll be live tomorrow, 2 hours before lock.
Yeah, okay, see you guys tomorrow. Good luck.